Hello, Katie.
Hello, good morning or afternoon, everybody. I guess we're up and running and live, and we want to welcome Senators Merkley and I believe Senator Wyden is on or coming on soon.
I was just saying hello to you. Did you hear me
There
say
you
hello,
are.
Katie?
Hi, yes.
Hello. Hello, Senator Merkley. Hello, Central Oregon.
Thanks to both of you for being here this afternoon to meet with our members. There you are. Now I can see you. Welcome. We're growing at about 420 or so attendees. We had 650 people register for this webinar today. So just want everybody to bear with us in the Q&A portion of this session. Because we're expecting a high volume of questions, I'll go ahead and be fielding questions as they come in and asking the senators. To let the audience know, Senator Merkley does need to get off the call at about 12:20, and Senator Wyden will be saying goodbye around 12:40, 12:45. So we'll be doing our best to make sure we respect that time frame as we move through the program. We have support materials available to you. We'll be sending those out along with a complete recording of this webinar. And also you can, if you have further questions, both senators have district representatives here who will be happy to follow up after the webinar and answer any questions you might not have been able to ask during this next 45 minutes or so. All right, and so with that, what I want to do is get out of the way and introduce both Senator Jeff Merkley and Senator Ron Wyden. They're going to open with just a few remarks, and Senator Wyden, would you like to get us started?
Katie, thank you for doing this, and you all are always out there for small businesses in Central Oregon, and we know folks just feel like they've been hit by an economic wrecking ball. Today, the numbers came out, and essentially 10 million Americans have become unemployed almost overnight, literally in 2 weeks. So in one sense, this is much faster, much harder than anything anybody my age has seen, and much more painful even than the Great Recession in 2008. What I thought I'd do is just take a couple of minutes and kind of walk you through where we are and sort of how we got here, and then what we're going to do to get people help quickly. And Senator Merkley and I are a team. I'm on the Finance Committee. He's on the Appropriations Committee. We're going to be working together on all of these issues. The Finance Committee got much of the legislation that was passed last Friday, and I was basically, I'm in the Dirksen Senate office building now, and I was kind of down the corridor for days negotiating with the Trump administration on some of the key issues, particularly workers and small business. And the reason I focus on that is that the Oregon economy has always been two sides of one coin. The first is the workers, and right now those are people who are struggling to pay rent and buy groceries and pay for out-of-pocket medical. And we said we are going to update, modernize the unemployment system. Folks are going to get existing unemployment, plus I insisted that they also receive $600 more per week, each week for the next 4 months, so that we could, in effect, replace wages for a lot of people. And that's so important because we know markets are about demand, and if people don't have money in their pockets, they can't go and buy goods and services. So we got that on the worker side, and it's also extended for the first time to gig workers and freelancers and self-employed and independent contractors, a lot of people who didn't get a fair shake. And in addition to that, we said, look, we all know that employers, particularly in Oregon, are small. A lot of them are feeling enormous pain right now. And so what we did is come up with some programs. Most of them are Small Business Administration programs. There are some, for example, that go through the Treasury Department. I was the author of the employee retention program, where when an employer retains workers, they're eligible for a tax credit. And Senator Merkley and I will walk you through that. Two last points. The whole idea was to try to the greatest extent possible to put a pause on all this hemorrhaging that we're seeing in terms of our economy, and make it possible for workers to the greatest extent to replace wages, and make it possible for small employers to keep their doors open. And when you do that, you give yourself a chance when, after you've beaten back the virus and you're on your way to a recovery, you're not really starting from scratch. You haven't had just the wreckage everywhere and you're starting from scratch. People are in a position to be able to recover more quickly if they are able to get the unemployment insurance benefits, and if the small businesses can have the assistance we're going to describe. Now, what I thought I would do in wrapping up is kind of jumpstart a few of the questions. And Senator Merkley and I have been having these programs around the state, so I'm trying to give a little bit of a preview of what we've been asking. The first is, if you have an existing SBA loan, you will now have total SBA forgiveness for 6 months. No payments, no interest, no worry about keeping your door open. Second, have you been able to keep any of your staff on payroll? If you have, you will be able to get 100% of payroll on that tax credit that I mentioned that we authored in the Finance Committee. Of course, you're concerned about employees being laid off. So that is the extra $600 a week for those in unemployment right now. And second, if you're in a rural market, we said that we're going to give those businesses a priority. That, of course, is Central Oregon. Finally, if you're a charity or a nonprofit, I insisted that charities of any size would be eligible for the employee retention tax credit and the new SBA new Paycheck Protection Program and this special program for economic injury disaster loans. And as of this morning, the SBA is telling us that that application, in effect, will take about 2 hours to fill out. Other detail that we thought would be helpful is that it's expected tomorrow that the Small Business Administration will start processing applications for the Paycheck Protection Program. So folks will be able to, in effect, move ahead with the applications rather than just talk about them, as we have seen in the last couple of days. You can find an application link on my website. I know Senator Merkley has very valuable information on his website as well. Let me use that as kind of an opening salvo. Jacob Egler and Tim Leahy are on this call with me. Also, Jenny Katzman, one of our experts at the Finance Committee, is on the call as well to answer the tough questions. And all our staff folks just love working nights and weekends. So please keep them happy, keep them busy. And seriously, Senator Merkley and I are trying to be as hands-on as we possibly can be. We both recognize that more is going to have to be done to help Central Oregon and our whole state. And with that, in the parlance of the United States Senate, why don't I yield to my colleague? And between the Appropriations Committee and the Finance Committee, we try to cover Oregon's bases. And he is also pulling out all the stops to be around the state. And let's hear from Jeff. And then one of the benefits of seniority, you can give me easy questions and give him hard ones. Jeff.
Well, greetings, everyone, and thank you, Katie, for setting up this call, and for the Ben Chamber for working so hard to inform the businesses about how to navigate their way through these different programs. I'll just kind of hit those 4 main programs for small business. Ron has mentioned them, and he did a fabulous job with the Finance Committee helping to set up this bill. We now are really concerned about how quickly it gets implemented. Because we know that our economy is just imploding by the day. That 6.6 million more unemployment across the country. That means in 2 weeks, we've gone from 3% unemployment to 13% unemployment or something close to that. So that's just a disaster like we have not seen in our lifetimes. So the PPP program, that's the big deal of how do small businesses and nonprofits keep operating. Well, the federal government will pick up 2 months of your payroll with benefits, and they can give you another 25% on top of that sum to help pay for everything else, utilities, rent, mortgage, supplies, so on and so forth. You may have said, well, I've already laid people off. Well, you can rehire them and apply for the PPP program. It's called a forgivable loan. I like to just call it a grant. As long as the funds are spent as they are required by law to be spent on real business expenses, then it's a grant. And you do not have to pledge your personal fortune as collateral, give a personal guarantee, because it is intended to be a grant. Merkley.senate.gov/Main Street. We have the application link that's new. The program is supposed to be stood up tomorrow. I'm encouraging everyone to call your bank or credit union today to start that conversation. Get the application, get it filled out, get at the front of the line. We want Oregonians to be at the front of the line ahead of everybody else around the country, because you can be sure with a new program, they're going to be overwhelmed in the beginning. And so that's one. And second of all, if you have that, you still qualify. If you apply for that, you still qualify to have the SBA pay your loan payments for existing or new SBA loans for 6 months. Now, on the other hand, if you don't decide to utilize that PPP program, you can still get a $10,000 grant, and you'd benefit from the SBA loans being paid for 6 months, including new SBA loans. Great time to take out an SBA loan. And the 50% tax credit that Senator Wyden was so instrumental in making sure was available. I know there's going to be a lot of questions, and so I just want to stop there because let's turn it over to the things that you're really concerned about. And Katie, I do have to get off at 12:25 for another meeting.
Hey, Katie, Ron here. There was one question that came up with respect to chambers of commerce, and we were able in the finance committee to essentially qualify them as nonprofit organizations. And that means that chambers like yours are exempt from paying a tax, and you're also eligible for the disaster loans, the economic injury grants as well.
Great, thank you very much, Senator Wyden. What I'd like to do, Senator Merkley, I'm probably gonna throw a couple of questions initially your way because you have to get off first. So one of the first questions that I've heard in many other conversations, but it came up today, is that we have a person who says they've heard the PPP program will be massively oversubscribed, which is concerning to folks because the need is so great across the country. So the question is, what is the plan to make sure we can all receive the benefits from this program, or what's the backup plan if we run out?
Well, plan A is to get everybody in Oregon in the front of the line. The sense that it'll be oversubscribed is based on if you take all the small businesses in America and they all apply, definitely be oversubscribed. But many small businesses have already laid people off. They're not going to rehire. And so we're not sure if we'll run out of money. But if we do, this is why we're going to be continuously doing another Corona bill. So we've done 1, 2, and 3. Corona number 4 will be coming up when we return to DC. We're taking feedback on everything that needs to be done in that bill. And I'm sure if we get to the point of maxing out the funds for this, the whole intention is to get more funds allocated.
Great.
And Katie, it is $350 billion for that program. So as Jeff said, let's get there early. There's a big sum of money. There is going to be a big demand, and we expect to have to do more.
And Katie, if folks are wondering, well, does my bank or credit union, are they participating? So there is a list available now, and I do have it on my website at the merkley.senate.gov/Main Street, list of the credit unions and banks that are participating here in Oregon.
Senator Merkley, thank you for that. One of the other questions in the queue is how will this act be deployed rapidly in a hyperlocal way? And you just mentioned one of the ways that the SBA grants go out is through your local bank. On the ground, there are a lot of folks who aren't used to applying for federal aid. This is the first time they've ever done it. So can you walk us through what this actually would look like from an experience of a small business owner applying for these loans?
Well, so I'll give you my best sense of it, but quite frankly, we haven't been through this specific process, so we're estimating it. But the application is now available. It is going to require businesses to lay out kind of a set of basic documents related to what their payroll was on average for the previous year. That is the foundation for then you get 2.5 times the average monthly payroll for that previous year, which that's why you get 2 months of payroll covered plus another 25% per month to cover other expenses. So those basic documents, Ron mentioned the estimate is about 2 hours to fill it out. I'd fill it out, I'd load it down and fill it out now. I don't think these things are ever as smooth as the bureaucracy predicts. So if there's trick questions on there, we're going to be available to help guide people through the process. We're very concerned that the banks actually get the guidance they need about the guarantees of the loan so that they can start reviewing these applications tomorrow. We've been told that's going to happen. We're hoping that's going to happen, but it hasn't happened yet.
Thank you. Senator Wyden, did you have anything to add?
No, the only other point is we did try to write into the language that, and this is in black letter law, that rural America had to be a priority because we were especially concerned about the very point you're making. And we talked to the Central Oregon Economic Recovery teams, Seth Crawford and others. That was the first question I wanted to ask is, how's this going to apply to rural communities? And in the black letter law, it makes rural communities a priority. So if people really feel that it's not going very well and they're kind of getting waltzed around, or it's just confusing, we want to know about it because the law says that's not the way it's supposed to be.
Thank you. I'm getting quite a few questions about the $600 federal assistance for unemployment. Two questions that I think are interrelated. And again, Senator Merkley, I'll go to you first and then segue over to Senator Wyden. One person is part-time laid off, receiving unemployment benefits. Are they eligible for the $600 federal assistance? And also, what about independent contractors whose income may be variable? How do they calculate their benefit based on a variable income?
Yes, so actually Ron's the better expert on this. So I'll give a brief version and then he can correct me. Essentially it's designed so that everyone is eligible, whether they've paid into unemployment insurance before. That means gig workers are sole proprietors, contractors. They have to establish evidence of what their income was before the crisis as a foundation for how much they would get. I'm not sure if the $600 is prorated. I'll turn that over to Ron if he knows.
Okay. No, the point is, let's kind of back up a little bit. Part-time workers, independent contractors, gig workers are all covered. And there is a formula based on your past earnings as reported in your taxes. So in effect, that's pretty much all we have right now. A couple of days ago, I had a conversation with the Secretary of Labor. This is run by the states, but the IRS obviously takes the lead in terms of taxes. So we'll have some more to say about that. But the person who just was questioning, would they be eligible? The part-time worker, the independent contractor, the gig worker, the freelancer, the part-timer, we insisted they be covered because the unemployment insurance program was invented in the 30s and nobody ever heard about those kind of people. So that was a bottom line item for us. And what we know now is it's really your past earnings as reported in taxes that is going to be the guide for this.
Thank you. Okay, many other questions around the PPP. But let's go to, for the PPP to be forgivable, it says that 75% of costs need to be used for payroll for 8 weeks. Is there time frame restrictions on the 8 weeks, or does it start from the time the loan funds begin?
Okay, well, I'm afraid I'm going to give bad information on this. My understanding is it's to cover your from the time you apply, but that is a point that I would want to double check. We'll get you the information, Katie. BJ on my team's taking down the question. We'll have you circulate it. The intention is to cover a full 2 months, and if you rehire, so I encourage people to think about rehiring your employees. It will cover those you rehire. It is based on maintaining employment equal to what you had the previous year. And so if you have laid off people and you leave them laid off, then less of the loan is forgivable.
And Katie, that is what we're supposed to be getting tomorrow. I mean, tomorrow, and this is kind of a account that has some people hearing about it, some people wondering about it, but what we have been told is tomorrow, the Small Business Administration is actually going to have the process for those kinds of questions when the 8 week starts and the like out, and people will be able to start moving ahead with the applications. And we do have them on our website, both of us.
Thank you. I have a question from an employee who said they had been offered a 50% pay cut in order to stay employed. Is there any assistance to employees? And I think this is happening a lot. Everybody is scrambling to figure out, how do I resolve this? How do I keep my folks with at least a little income coming in? And so we are adapting out here in the world. And so they're asking, if they take a 50% pay cut from their employer, is there any assistance to employees who haven't been laid off but have experienced this pay cut? Will they also be eligible for this $600?
Okay, so we have maybe 2 questions that are related to that. One is the shared work program, where an employer will say, I can keep you on 2 hours a day, 4 hours a day instead of 8 hours a day. And then the balance of your time can be picked up by the unemployment insurance. On the other hand, if an employee could go back to their employer and say, apply for this program, this PPP program, because federal government will pay the entirety of my wages and I'll be available fully ready to participate. So there's options for the employer and the employee to work out in that context.
And Katie, in the negotiations over the unemployment insurance provision, I insisted that we have, for the first time, a formal federal policy on work sharing. And there are a whole number of states. Oregon was not one of the leaders on this, Rhode Island and others who have had great success with it. And the idea is to create more options for both the employer and the employee. The employer covers a part of it, and unemployment insurance, UI, would pick up the rest, and you would also ensure that you didn't have as many of your staff folks laid off. So we'll have some more to say about it, but this is something I really would recommend for Oregon employers and workers as we go forward in these next challenging weeks. And we'll have more guidance on that as well. It's hard to constantly sound like you're saying the same thing, but on a number of these programs, what we have is the law that was written last week. It was finalized on Friday, and then by Monday, everybody, because of the incredible economic hemorrhaging, wanted to know where the rules were and where the guidance was. And Senator Merkley and I were doing our best to get people information. But my sense is by tomorrow and by Monday, I think we're going to be able to have a fair amount of the guidance in people's hands and get at some of these questions.
Thank you. Senator Merkley, I think you have to leave soon. Would you like to say a few things?
Yes, I have to get off for another call, and I really appreciate that you're setting up these kinds of conversations. As Senator Wyden mentioned, both of our staffs are available. My regional field rep is on the line. BJ, he's taking notes. He can follow back up on any details. Another member of my team is just solely focused on small business answers. And so BJ can put folks in contact with Jake. This is an extraordinary moment in time where we're hit by the double challenge and anxiety of both the healthcare side and the employment side. We will get through this. We've got to get through it together, sharing information, giving feedback, helping each other out. And we're going to go back to DC and try to deliver on the next phase of all the places we see that are inadequately served by the bill that we just passed. So you all are the small business, just the heart of our economy. Our economy is going to take a massive hit. We're here in partnership with you to try to get through it and restore your businesses, restore the economy. Thank you so much, and take care and stay healthy.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Wyden, there have been several questions, and let me know if this is a little bit out of your purview, but a lot of folks are worried about day 61 after the PPP Act is spent, and wondering if the Oregon Workshare program can come in behind that, or what that segue might look like if they have a need for assistance after day 60. Any thoughts?
So Katie, your question is what happens when the federal PPP money runs out, assuming that it does. Is that really it?
Yeah, that's really it. Thank you.
Well, first of all, that is why I'm sitting at my desk in the Senate Dirksen office building, because I'm trying to make sure two things happen. One is we wring out of this bill every bit of possible assistance for people now, which is why Senator Merkley and I were both talking about people being well positioned for tomorrow and being able to get access to the PPP program. It is a big sum of money. There's no question about it. $350 billion is a substantial sum of money. I share your view that there's going to be enormous interest in that program. And that's why I'm sitting at my desk, and I've had several calls with the leadership talking about the next steps, because I think they're going to be inevitable. The president has expressed interest in an infrastructure program. Nancy Pelosi has expressed interest in an infrastructure program. Many of you know that I authored the Build America Bonds program that were very popular in the Great Recession, in the economic package after the Great Recession, and we saw Oregon make extensive use of those. So I think being ready if and when we run out of PPP money is going to be key. I've been already talking to a number of the state legislators, and I think they're already talking about what to do, particularly in the short term. Say you need 60 to 90 days kind of coverage. And I think that if we continue to see what we've seen in a matter of days, 3% of Americans unemployed in a fortnight, I think you're going to have Congress be prepared to move and move quickly. And I think PPP has an opportunity to really be a successful program, get more money for it. We're going to have the state working on it. And I'll be just walking down the corridor of the Senate Finance Room and working to extend things like the employee retention tax credit and these other programs.
Thank you, Senator. I've had a couple of questions around immigrant businesses, and I think this is a good question. One is, are there more than one language available as you're going through this SBA application process, and are immigrant
the answer to that one is yes, Katie. That those documents, based on everything I've always seen, are in more than one language.
And are immigrant business owners eligible?
I believe they are. I mean, we understand what the debate is between documented, undocumented workers and the like, but I believe the people you're talking about are eligible.
Thank you. There are several questions around taxes, and I'm going to try and summarize this. One of the questions is, if taxes have already been filed, will any refund that's owed be deferred due to these changes?
I'm not sure that that's the case. I mean, there already is a deferral of payroll taxes for employers. I'm going to have to check that one. I mean, that is not a question I've been asked, and I thought I've been asked over the years, practically everything
Okay.
about taxes. Let me try to run that to ground. And we've got our folks there, Jacob and Tim and Jenny, and we can probably give you some initial take by COB today, but might take a little longer.
Yes, understood. Related question, and you may want to also defer this, but a question regarding some of the IRS penalty fees. It's my understanding, but I don't know for sure. Will these fees be deferred or withheld during this time? Because there are so many moving pieces right now with filing deadlines, et cetera. The question is, what is the leniency of IRS penalties during this time?
I think we ought to start with, we've already had the deadlines for filing taxes moved back, Katie. So I think it's fair to say people understand this is not just a garden variety kind of time as it relates to taxes and economics and the like. I am going to have to check that out, and I don't want to
Understood.
information in the air, but the fact that tax filing was moved so quickly at the federal level, I think is a signal that there's some awareness that not only are people hurting, but in a lot of instances, they're wondering where people who are helping them and preparers and the like, are, so that they can get things filed.
Understood. Several questions in the queue of folks with their own personal stories, and we'll of course be passing this on to your team, Senator, because it's really helpful to know, I would imagine, what the on the ground experience is. But here's one I'd like to just read. My husband's company already laid him off, and there's no chance that the $10,000 will keep that small business afloat. It's simply not enough for the organization. So he was laid off last week, and they filed for unemployment. And if you talk with our Central Oregon economist, David Runberg, he'll tell you that the queue line is long. The state is doing its best it can to process all the unemployment claims that are filed, but I know that there's a backlog. So the question is, what suggestions might you have for folks who are simply waiting for these checks to come? And what is your expectation of payouts and the timing?
Well,
from the federal?
let me tell you what we know. We authorized $1 billion more for the states to move these checks through the system. The federal government does not run the unemployment compensation system. It's run by the states. But obviously the federal government has been involved in trying to make extra dollars available and the like. And in fact, earlier this week, I sent a letter with the Democratic leader and others to the Department of Labor saying we wanted to know by close of business tomorrow, as in Friday, answers to the questions you just asked. Because I said, I'm in the Dirksen Senate office building having all these calls with folks at home, and that is arguably the number one question. When you have 10 million people laid off virtually overnight, what they want to know is, how are they going to pay the rent? How are they going to pay for groceries? How are they going to be able to cover medical expenses. They had a lot of out-of-pocket medical before the coronavirus, and now they have even more. So what I'm planning to do is sort of give people bulletins every single day, but on the UI question specifically. I and Senator Schumer, Senator Sanders, others have said we want to know by close of business tomorrow when people can expect to start getting checks. Yes, the unemployment insurance offices are flooded, but at one point I said, it isn't that complicated to tell people that they're going to get $600 more each week on top of what they would have gotten before.
Yep. Thank you.
But that one, Katie, in particular, I'm going to give to Oregon organizations, the economic recovery teams, a report by close of business tomorrow on whether we got the information that we asked for from the Department of Labor. We asked it directly of Secretary Scalia. I've talked with him on a number of occasions during this whole debate. We'll let people know tomorrow what we have, and if we don't have it tomorrow, we'll ask for it Monday. We'll just keep asking for it.
Thank you, Senator. So there are a lot of questions, a lot of folks, again, trying to figure out which loans, grants, PPP programs to apply for. What advice can you offer to small businesses that are trying to identify which pot of money makes most sense for their business? And several questions on, if you apply for one, do you disqualify yourself for another?
No, there's several where you're eligible for both. And let me kind of give a sense of what it was we were trying to do. Not all of these were programs we were in charge of on the Finance Committee, but the idea was to try to create a suite of programs so as to get as many people as possible assistance, and particularly the kind of businesses we have in Oregon, the small and medium-sized businesses. I think it's kind of ironic because I spent my morning on it. There's a program for big businesses. The Trump administration gets to run it, Secretary Mnuchin, the big businesses, and I was busy trying to put some guardrails on it to protect taxpayers. So the programs that I'm going through here with you that Senator Merkley touched on as well are the principal ones that help Oregon small businesses. And yes, there are a number that folks are eligible for both. Now, you can go to my website for all of the details, but let me tick them off. The employee retention, credit is appealing for small businesses because it's a fully refundable credit that would be available to any business or nonprofit that has had a furloughed or reduced workforce. The credit is modest. It's limited to $5,000 per employee, but it's refundable against payroll taxes, and the Treasury Department will make advance payments to get money to those very small businesses more quickly. And this is basically for businesses with 100 employees or less. Certainly the deferral of employer payroll taxes will be important to a lot of Oregon businesses. Those are taxes that aren't due until 2021 and end of 2021 and end of 2022, with 50% of the liability being paid at each date. I think we pretty much pummeled paycheck protection. This basically is going to give a lot of folks cash flow assistance through 100% federally guaranteed loans. And it's for people who maintain payroll. And tomorrow we get the specifics, and as we talked about, forgiveness of up to 8 weeks of payrolls based on employee retention. I think I mentioned the nonprofits and the charities. They're all eligible. That was something that was particularly important to me. That's a program, for example, the charities are eligible for both the employee retention credit and they're eligible for the Paycheck Protection Program. We mentioned the debt relief program. That's immediate relief that basically covers 6 months. That ought to help, by my calculations, something like 4,000 Oregon small businesses. And finally, there's the disaster loan program that is an emergency advance of up to $10,000 to small businesses and the nonprofits, and it's something that's turned around very quickly. So we can walk people through other kinds of questions. Those are the big four that Oregon businesses really should be focusing on.
Thank you, Senator. That was really helpful. I know you have to leave, and I wanted to invite you to make some final remarks before your time is up with us today.
To me, the most important thing, Katie, is this is not a discussion that sort of completes the subject. I put this in the to be continued department. And I think folks in Central Oregon know that I do a lot of town hall meetings. I think I've had like 970 of them. And what I like most is being with people directly and being able to have a conversation where, you know, I'm in Redmond or Lapine or somewhere where I can just talk to folks and have them educate me. We're obviously not able to do this now, but I still feel so strongly, and it's why I'm sitting at my desk in the Dirksen building, that home, whether you're in Bend or in my neighborhood in Southeast Portland, home is 3,000 miles away from Washington, D.C. And a lot of Oregonians always tell me, is it Ron, you know, good we're having these meetings and like seeing you at the Fred Meyer or whatever. But for a lot of Oregonians, Washington, D.C. might as well be Mars for all the typical connection it has to them. It's a little different right now because the economic hurt is so great. And we're talking about a piece of federal legislation. I do think it's going to be supplemented by the states. But it's my job to shorten the distance between Central Oregon and DC and try to provide the quickest possible help to all the people that are hurting. That's what we see as our job. We've got Jacob and Tim and Jenny all available to you. Big thanks to what all you folks are doing in Central Oregon. And I'm going to sign off simply by saying to be continued, because there are a lot of folks that are hurting, and we're going to stay after it till they get some help.
Senator, thank you very much. Truly
Thank you, Katie.
time.
Thank you.
And yes, thanks. There will be lots of time for his team to answer questions. We have a lot in the queue regarding so many different topics that it was really tough to choose which ones to insert into the conversation today. But there's a lot of detailed work here that I'm sure that both senators' teams will be working on to answer. And our plan is to forward these questions on to Jacob and to BJ and the other folks that are on the senators' teams to get your answers to you as soon as possible. Thank you so much for joining us today. I do have a few things to share with you. A lot of the questions today can be answered, at least in part, at the centraloregonsos.com website. This is a regional website that was stood up last week that is a one-stop shop for everybody to go to get links directly that will answer some of these questions about, do I qualify if I have X amount of employees, or what tax year do I use to get the relief for the return based on the stimulus package. Also, many questions about the unemployment insurance, and I do encourage you to use that, centraloregonsos.com. It's the website you see on your screen now, and hopefully it's a good resource for you. In addition to that, another thing that's happening, a group of folks is starting up a new website platform called bendsos.com. And what it will be is an opportunity for folks to purchase and invest in future credit in some of your local businesses here around Bend. We are going to be setting up the pilot starting maybe Tuesday, Wednesday, sometime next week. It'll be up and running within another week or so. And it'll be a direct cash infusion from us living here in Central Oregon to the businesses in Central Oregon. And it is set up as a kind of like a gift certificate to purchase future goods and services, but it can also be a simple gift and an investment that will help some of your favorite in town keep their doors open and maybe help bridge that gap in filling in that cash as we all wait for these federal and state programs to come through and our unemployment checks to show up in our mailboxes. So that will be bendsos.com. It is not up yet. Hopefully within the next week, it will be. If you're a business that is interested in being on that site, you can go to contact@mainstreetsos.com. contact@mainstreetsos.com. Let them know that you're interested in putting your business up on this website, and we'll get this platform up and running here in the next week and hopefully provide a little bit of relief for those of you who are waiting in the queue. Lastly, there are local people here to help. One of the things that's hard to do when you're talking with lawmakers who are in the thick of putting this stuff together is getting really individualized advice and information. There are resources here in Central Oregon that you can go to and to talk to somebody, walk you through some of this. Some of those resources are, first and foremost, the SBDC, the Small Business Development Council. They're at bizcenter.org, Central Oregon SBDC, and you can look them up, Google them, and they have a lineup of folks that are there to help you and actually talk to you and walk you through which options might make more sense for your business and kind of walk you through the process. I do want to warn everybody, if you haven't gone on already, you probably already know, it takes a while to fill in these applications. I hear, I think that Senator Wyden said that it's on average taking a couple of hours to go through these processes online. I've also heard from people who are physically doing this out there in the field that the refresh button as you go through the application process is a little frustrating. It takes a while just because of the volume of folks trying to get online. So be patient, ask for help through the SBDC. There are other folks here in the community that can help you. EDCO, Economic Development Central Oregon, SCORE, which is a group of folks that are advisors that are available to help. And you can Google SCORE Central Oregon, and other organizations, including your local chambers, to provide you a little bit of insight and help you through that process. So we will be trying to do our next series of this webinar with folks who know the on-the-ground experience, who can help walk you through en masse. We're still lining up those speakers, and we're hoping to do that within the next week or less to help walk you through in a more hands-on type of webinar that could be individualized a little bit more for those of you experiencing a little problems with the process or just curious about which programs you want to go after and how to get walked through that. I want to thank all of you for joining us today. I hope you found this informational and helpful, and we will continue trying to bring you information that can help you get through these hard times. If you have any input for us, we'd sure love to hear from you. And you can get a hold of us at admin@bendchamber.org, and we're happy to answer any questions. This webinar will be up on our website shortly, along with a number of support materials that help walk you through the process, help you identify which program to actually even apply for, and other types of information, a list of local banks. By the way, most of the banks in town are SBA certified banks and can help you through this process as well. And hopefully you've already been working through your local bank to help you in this tough time as well. Thank you again for joining us. Be well, and let us know if there's anything we can do to help you out there. Take care.